As I mentioned, it was Labor and the Greens who delivered the votes to allow the Senate inquiry into the Queensland government to go ahead. Greens Senator Larissa explained the party's position to political reporter Julie Doyle.
Larissa Waters, thanks for coming in today. Why do you think it's appropriate for one parliament to inquire into another parliament?
Well, look, importantly, what has been established is a Senate inquiry, which all parties will be represented on, and it will look into the litany of attacks that Campbell Newman has raged on Queenslanders in his short period as our Premier, including restrictions on Queenslanders' civil liberties, the sacking of thousands of public servants.
Yes, but why do you think it's appropriate for the Senate to do that?
Well, we don't have an upper house in Queensland, and we've seen with the vast majority of the Newman government, they have used and abused that power to the extent of passing huge changes to our mining laws, for one, at 3 minutes to midnight, removing vast bulk of community rights to object to big mining projects. It's just one example. They have been using and abusing their power, and without that upper house in Queensland, there's been no accountability and no scrutiny of that. This is a chance for the Senate, within its own powers and certainly not beyond those powers, to examine those terrible decisions. And I'm really pleased the Greens were able to include in those terms of reference issues about the environment. And we've been very strong to make sure that we will look at not only the track record of the Newman government on the environment, but also the coal seam gas approvals issued under the former Labor government, and also the activities of Mr Palmer himself and his companies.
Are you worried, though, about the precedent that this will set?
Look, I'm not worried about the precedent because we have stayed well within the powers of the Senate. That was obviously an issue that we were very cautious and careful about. The terms of reference are drafted very tightly to reflect the abilities of the Senate to investigate, but not to go beyond that mark. And when it comes to the conduct of the inquiry, we will err on the side of caution to make sure that the Senate is staying within its powers to investigate these matters.
So are you confident that this inquiry would be able to withstand a legal challenge?
Yes, absolutely. The terms of reference are clearly within the scope of the Commonwealth Parliament's ability to investigate. And when it comes to the calling of witnesses, I think that's where the grey area might arise. And the Senate practice is that you shouldn't compel the appearance of other members of Parliament before an inquiry. The Greens won't be party to compelling. We will certainly invite public servants and ministers to give evidence, but we won't be party to compelling them, and I think that will keep us out of the courts and well within the scope of the Senate's powers.
So if you're not going to compel people to give evidence, you're going to invite them, do you expect that they will appear? And if they don't, what will be the point of having this committee?
I'm expecting that we will have a lot of whistleblowers come and give us evidence before this inquiry, and I know of at least one that can talk about the extreme political pressure that she was subjected to issue coal seam gas approvals without proper scrutiny of their environmental impacts. I imagine there will be a very large number of public servants and former public servants who are prepared to blow the whistle underprivileged before this inquiry and enable us to examine the real workings of the Queensland government, particularly as regards the environment, and I welcome that.
On the environment, so you did get some agreement with Clive Palmer when it comes to changes that the government wanted to put in place with environmental legislation. Can you tell us exactly what he's agreed to there?
Yeah, look, there's a number of things that we agreed with Mr Palmer should be included in the terms of reference for this inquiry, and that is so that the Senate can examine whether or not Campbell Newman has gone far too far, I certainly think he has, in the changes and the watering downs that he's done for environmental law in Queensland. But importantly, Mr Tony Abbott has had a plan to give away federal environmental approval powers to state governments like the Newman government. And we have been able to convince the Palmer United Party that if they think the Newman government is so awful as to warrant an inquiry, then they should not vote for Mr Abbott's plan to give away federal protection powers and leave it all up to Campbell Newman. So that's been a really important part of the arrangement to see this inquiry proceed and those environment powers protected.
Can you trust Clive Palmer to deliver on his end of the bargain, though?
Well, time will tell. But the keeping federal protection for the Great Barrier Reef, for our internationally significant species and places has been something that I've been campaigning on for years, ever since the Gillard government first proposed it. Thankfully, Labor have now changed their view on that and done a 180, which I welcome. It is so important that we keep these federal protections. If we didn't have these federal laws, there would have been oil rigs in the Great Barrier Reef. The Franklin River would have been dammed. We've got to make sure that there are federal protections for our nationally and internationally significant environmental icons. And this inquiry will likewise enable us to look at the track record of state governments on the environment. So I think it's a good day for the environment.
Larissa Waters, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.